Good day, dear aspirants. I hope you all are doing good. We'll be discussing about a very prominent topic, antibiotics and WHO. How antibiotics is seen by WHO. It is an article published in the Lancet Public Health Study in the year 2026 recently, and it is in news. Like WHO has classified antibiotics. Now let us see what are antibiotics, why do we use them, why did WHO classify them, what is the article telling about, because many questions were asked from Lancet journal. So directly in UPSC has once questioned what is Lancet journal, whether it is an NGO organization, whether it is public health study group, etc. Okay, clearly. So that is the reason whatever the articles are being published in the Lancet journal, they get global attention. Now, the researchers have conducted a study which WHO, World Health Organization, it is the first global framework to estimate countries antibiotic need. So how countries need antibiotic, this was the first time globally. So nearly 186 countries and territories have been analyzed, nearly covering 99.8 percentage of population. 99.8 percentage of population. Among this, India is overusing powerful watch category antibiotics while underusing both access and reserve antibiotics. In a meanwhile, I will explain you what are access antibiotics, what are reserve antibiotics, what are watch antibiotics. So actually the theme of our study is this, because WHO, World Health Organization, has classified antibiotics into three different groups. Okay, so why this matters, why the need for classification. So why there is a need for classification, because before that we need to understand what are antibiotics and what is antimicrobial resistance. So what are antibiotics? So antimicrobial or antibiotic medicine, they are used to treat bacterial infection. Remember very precisely, very clearly, they treat bacterial infection by killing bacteria or preventing their multiplication. So because here what do antibiotics do is, when a bacteria, so for suppose this is a bacteria, it infects a person, it infects a human being. So once you administer antibiotic, then it will kill the bacteria which has entered into our body. So this works true and efficiently for bacteria. So but it is ineffective against viral infections such as common cold, influenza and sore throats. So remember this very clearly. So here whatever the common cold we are getting, it is because of virus, it is not because of bacteria. But once you feel that you are attacked by common cold, then you go and get antibiotics and you start using antibiotics. So the problem lies here, the purpose of antibiotics is to treat antimicrobials. Okay, so but we are using them in a wrong manner because they don't work for virus. Next one, coming to antimicrobial resist. So under antimicrobial resist, several questions were posed in previous examinations also, but yet we need to remember what is antimicrobial resistance. It is the condition in which bacteria, fungus, virus and parasites no longer respond to antimicrobial medicines, making infections threat harder to treat and increasing the risk. It increases the risk of disease spread and severe illness as well as death. See, to explain you this simply, if we go back to recent what happening in our countries, youth protest at Jantar Mantar. So if a person is being attacked by police lathi charge, if he is being lathi charged, he is again coming up and showing up the next day. And if he is being attacked again next day, again he will come up and again he is showing up. He is not losing his spirit, right? So the same happens, he gains resistance. So whatever they do, no problem, I will stand here for my cause. Likewise, the man is standing. Similar theory applies to bacteria also. Similar theory applies to fungi also. Similar theory applies to virus also. Here, these microorganisms, these microorganisms are gaining resistance. They are gaining resistance gradually. So once you got affected with cold, you are using antibiotic. Okay. So the second time you are using antibiotic, the third time you are using antibiotic, the fourth time you are using antibiotic. Gradually, the bacteria which has affected you or the virus which has affected you, bacteria which has affected you or the virus it has affected you, gradually will gain resistance, and it is not going to respond to the medicines. Clear? So next one, because of which WHO has classified antibiotics into aware classification. So let us see, based on, so how did this grouping happen is spectrum of activity, so which means how it is acting, potential to drive antimicrobial resistance, at what point it is gaining antimicrobial resistance. So for this they classified, and recommended pattern of and also recommended pattern of use for access, watch and reserve. For access type of antibiotics, they are the first choice of drugs for common infections. So for suppose if a person is suffering with any small kind of fever, then you can go with common and access type of antibiotics. So they are for common infections, very common mild infections. So because they have low risk of driving resistance, they have low risk of driving antimicrobial resistance. With respect to watch category of antibiotics, with respect to watch type of category, so they are broad spectrum drugs for specific infections. I will give you examples also for them in next slide. So they are broad spectrum drugs for specific infections. They are used for specific kind of infections. So they have higher risk of promoting antimicrobial resistance. So they have higher risk of promoting antimicrobial resistance. Next, reserve type of antibiotics. They are the last resort drug for multi-drug resistant infections. They are the last resort drug for multi-drug resistance. They are only used when all other options are failed. So they will be used only when all other options get failed. So for example, here you can take, if a person is hospitalized for several months. If a person is hospitalized, he recently got hospitalized, okay, so for several months, for 2 to 3 months, so gradually what happen is the person will be acquiring various kinds of bacterial infection. If this person has already overused watch or access type of antibiotics prior, then these antibiotics don't function on that person. They don't function on that person, and they won't cure the infection which he is acquiring on the bed. So gradually they will use reserve type of antibiotics. So this is actually the crux. Here we need to understand, WHO classified antibiotics into aware, access, watch as well as reserve. For access type of antibiotics have lower risk of resistance. Next, watch type, they have higher risk of promoting antibiotics resistance. For reserve type of antibiotics, when all other options of antibiotics fall, only we use them. Okay, so which means they are the last resort of antibiotics which we need to use. Next one, common antibiotics which are in practice, which can be cited as a very good example for them. Commonly used watch antibiotics are ceftriaxone, cefixime, azithromycin, which we commonly use if a person in our country get infected with common cold or common fever, we go and directly get azithromycin or dolo. Clear? Cephaloxacin, levofloxacin, piperacillin, tazobactam. These are all the watch antibiotics. So simply UPSC can ask a question: azithromycin, ciprofloxacin, according to World Health Organization aware classification, so they are commonly used as which type of antibiotics, whether it is access, or whether it is watch, or whether it is reserve antibiotics. So for reserve antibiotics, we have very common good examples like meropenem, colistin, ceftazidime, avibactam, cefiderosol, azithromycin, avibactam, azithromycin, avibactam. So these are the reserve type of antibiotics which are used at the last front. So the next one, so and India's antibiotics use ideal versus actual. Ideal, how much percentage we should use, but actually what we are using is that total antibiotics usage should be 14.7 points, but we are using 18.3, which is actually 4 points more than what has to be used. So with respect to access antibiotics, we are supposed to use 7.8 points, but we are using 4.3. So with respect to watch, we are having 6.0, but we are using 9.3. So remember here we are overusing access as well as watch antibiotics more than required. So more than what is required. So with respect to reserve type of antibiotics, 0.99. So but we are using 0.19. So share from the access 52.3% as well as 20. Actually it should be 52.3, but we are using 27%. So with this, WHO confirms that India is overusing less using access as well as watch type of access type of antibiotics are less used. Watch type of antibiotics are more used. Okay. Next one, the access gap. The access antibiotics are the safest and first choice drugs are the most underused category. They are the most underused category. Here we have seen access type 7.8 points we need to use, but we are using 4.5. So it is, and the burden gets shift to whereby the burden gets shift to reserve type of antibiotics. Okay, so the access antibiotics are the safest as well as first choice drug are the most underused category. The estimated requirement is 52.9 percentage, but we are using 27 percentage. Actual share of use from access category is 27 percentage. So it shortfalls of 25 PTS. So meanwhile, watch antibiotics are being overprescribed, raising antimicrobial resistance across the country. Here, the crux lies is that we are overusing watch type of antibiotics. So, while overusing the anti type of antibiotics, so here it leads to antimicrobial resistance. So next one, the global picture. India is not alone. The same India is not alone. The country which is doing that. So it has access to 186 countries. 72 percentage of nearly 72 percentage of countries use more antibiotics overall than estimated necessary. Nearly 72 percentage of countries are overusing the antibiotics. We are not alone. So 99 percentage of countries overprescribed antibiotics. 99 percentage of countries overprescribed antibiotics that drive antimicrobial resistance the most. It drives antimicrobial resistance the most. So next one, so it has also given few important pointers for all countries, how to actually control antimicrobial resistance and how to use antibiotics. Strengthening antimicrobial stewardship to promote rational antimicrobial use and also increase the access antibiotics when clinically approved. So we need to actually use more accessible antibiotic access category type of antibiotics and restrict the watch antibiotics to specific clinical indications and also reserve antibiotics only for documented and strongly suspected multi-drug infections. For multi-drug suspected infections, we need to use reserve type of antibiotics. So first we need to actually use access type of antibiotics, then watch type of antibiotics, then reserve antibiotics should be only for reserved for multi-drug resistance infections. Promote evidence-based prescribing through improved antimicrobial testing. So strengthening infection prevention practices and ensuring rational surgical methods. So next one, so we have why this topic is important is for GS2 we have GS3 we have, and in with respect to prelims also they can ask you aware categories, national action plan for antimicrobial resistance. We are having this plan. Okay, so we will have to remember these points for prelims. Next one, we have a very good mains question. So try to attempt the question. I'll give you answer in the next video. If at all you write down the answer, I'll be happy to correct it. The rational use of antibiotics, as highlighted by recent global studies, so poses a serious threat to public health in India. Examine the significance of WHO aware classification. Okay, so in addressing antimicrobial resistance and suggest measure to rationalize antibiotic use in our country. So 250 words, 15 marker question. So with respect to this, so start introduction with health threat, Lancet study findings, explain aware framework as we have read in a table format, access, watch as well as reserve. So India's mismatch, how much we are mismatching with respect to the ideal category, and overuse of watch, underuse of access, reserve with data, significance aware awareness for stewardship measures. What measures should we take? Stewardship program promoting access use, restricting watch, evidence based prescribing, infection prevention, conclusion linking to One Health approach. So try to give conclusion in a broader picture. So try to come up with a very good innovative answer. Thank you so much. This is all for today.